We are Maria
and Nicole. We're two secular homeschooling moms that have
been there, done that. Welcome to episode 25. How do you successfully teach math? Today we're going to be talking about dealing with math mistakes and what if you have an anxious child when you're teaching math? And we're also going to be talking about if homeschoolers need to give math tests. Today we're going to be talking about all of that and more.
And as usual, we want to stress that our podcast is an inclusive space for your everyday parents that are looking for education options. We are not here to convince you to homeschool. We want to stress that you need to do what works for your child and for your family.
Every family's different.
Absolutely. And you know your children best. So feel free to take what advice or information you get from here that works for you and chuck the rest.
Good morning, Nicole. How's it going?
Good morning, Maria.
Has spring sprung?
I don't know. Has it? Are we safe yet from cold weather? It's been cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, and gosh. Today's warm.
You know what's funny? Camp Gladiator on Monday morning was 35 degrees, and today it was 70 degrees out there.
I know. I can't decide whether it's time to go to Callaway's and buy all the plants and start, because I feel like we could get one more snap, right?
I think that's it. I think this last week, that was it. We're done. We're in it to win it. It's time for the spring flowers.
Are we?
I'm ready.
I'm ready too. And I'd my spring calendar is insane. I'm sure yours is too. My friends, my old college roommates want to get together, and they were like, how's this weekend and how's this weekend? And I was like, okay, wait, are we talking about 2023? Because I don't think I'm free again till spring 2027. We've got prom coming up.
Oh my gosh. I finally got my job, so everybody at our prom, it's a huge prom. I think it's the biggest one in the world, maybe. It's
huge. It's
thousands
enormous.
And thousands of
2 days. 2 days. A homeschool prom.
Yeah, they had to split it. It used to be one day, but then there were too many people. So.
And I saw they added tickets to one of the nights too, because people were scrambling as usual.
I didn't know that. Well,
we did it like Taylor Swift. I think we got up early, right? And stayed on the horn until the tickets came down, and jumped on those like it was a Ticketmaster thing. But
right. Well, I got my job, which is I'm going to be a check-in person. So everybody at this prom has to have a job, as you know.
Yes, I am I'm on the red carpet team. I'm a seamstress, like I've done many times. I work in the dress code room, which is always funny because you know how I feel about dress codes.
Not a fan.
No, I fix everybody's dresses while telling them whispering in their ear, I don't believe in arbitrary dress codes.
Yeah, that's a thing here. But you know what? Our kids have a great time. I'm sure there'll be a mosh pit, and my kid will be in the middle of it.
Oh, yeah. The conga line. He'll be leading that around. No, they're going to have a really great time. We're going prom dress shopping today, and hopefully we'll find something. Wish us luck.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we have a lot of things to talk about today. Outside of all these fun things that happen in the homeschool world, math sometimes isn't fun.
Ooh, no. We talked in a previous episode that teaching your child to read would be the hardest part of homeschooling, but math can sometimes be a challenge.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. For many parents, this was a challenging subject for them. It was for me. And it's easy to be a bit nervous about teaching math, especially when you get into upper level math as well. The good news is that with many homeschooling subjects, there are tons of options, from video formats to scripted programs out there, and you do not need to be an expert to teach math to your children.
No, you certainly don't. If you find it hard and frustrating to teach math, you're absolutely not alone. Many parents find the very thought of teaching math daunting because nothing ruins your homeschooling day more than fighting about math. The whole day is just going to be miserable if every time you pull out math, there's arguing, whining, crying, math tears.
Yeah, math tears are a real thing. So why does my child have math tears? Well, there's just going to be some kids that hate math. I mean, that's it. So no matter what we share with you here today and all the tips and tricks to help make teaching math easier, some kids are still not going to like math at the end of the day. Yeah. But hopefully we can help guide you, give you some extra tips so that there's less math tears in your house.
Right. There are different reasons why kids are discouraged by math. Some find it too hard, others might find it a little overwhelming, and then still others are so bored by it that they can hardly bring themselves to complete their assignments. I'd also caution you to make sure that you aren't projecting your own feelings about math onto your children.
Yes, for sure. It's also important to rule out an actual real obstacle to math, like learning disability. We talked about learning disabilities like dyscalculia in our learning disabilities episode. And if you haven't listened to that, we'll link it in the show notes. You can give it a little re-listen. But for the most part, most math obstacles are going to be caused by different issues.
Right. And in the middle of a lesson, your child might struggle to make connections between math concepts, or they may have forgotten the procedures needed for a simple calculation. And this can lead to a lot of tears for them, and in truth, sometimes for you too.
Yes.
No, it's not just math tears for your kids. The more frustrating math time is, the less you want to teach it, which can cause even more forgetting and more tears. And it can become this vicious cycle.
As hard as it may be for you to teach math, it's probably even harder for your child trying to get the concept. So you do want to be patient and try not to let your frustrations out. When your student is making a recurring mistake, it's an opportunity to pause and then ask together, okay, hey, what parts of this are we not understanding? Is there a way that we might approach this differently?
And remember that when things sometimes get too hard, it's really okay to walk away and come back to it later. And that's kind of one of the awesome things about homeschooling. You can make your own schedule and do your own timeline. Sometimes that can magically lead to understanding of the concept, but eventually we're going to have to get back to the topic at hand.
But instead of beating themselves up like every time they get something wrong or make a mistake, you really want to teach your kids to see math mistakes as opportunities to evaluate, to improve, and to learn. This is going to equip them with a skill that's useful for everything in life.
And recognizing mistakes is something that is extremely important in math, because this is one of those places where you can't have a partial incorrect answer. It's either going to be right or it's going to be wrong. And sometimes you really need to slow down and look at where mistakes are happening and why.
We have that happen a lot in our house where Tish will get through like a problem and she's like, I got it right. And I was like, no, you didn't. And she's like, well, I got it mostly right. I'm like, there's not mostly right in math. No. No, and look, you made this one little mistake right here.
Right, there's so many steps. And so, you miss one of those steps, the whole thing's wrong.
Yeah. It's also important to model working through mistakes. When you do this, you're empowering your students to become advocates for themselves, and this is especially the case as they progress into the upper levels of math, where the level can be especially challenging. And honestly, some children really breeze through some of that early math, but they might not actually completely understand the concept. So then when they get to things like algebra, you really do need to have a complete understanding of these concepts, because you can't really fake your way through it. Right. And this is sometimes where real math anxiety hits, because finally it's gotten hard.
Right. And it's important when teaching the skills that you're not just teaching memorization and your child's really understanding that concept. This is one reason I really like to use manipulatives when I teach. It helps to really concrete the understanding.
Yeah, I like to use those too.
And finding ways to model the process of turning math mistakes into opportunities for your child is so important. You spend a lot of time with your child and they see you day in and day out, and we all make mistakes and they see that. Use those opportunities to model that, what would be otherwise considered a mistake, in an important part of the learning process. One example that kind of comes to mind is years ago when I was building the deck in my back porch. My awesome dad and brothers came to help me. Yay, thank you guys. But anyway, so my youngest was shadowing me the entire time that I was cutting boards on the saw. And I took one of the boards and I cut it completely the wrong angle. And I could have sat there in despair, but I looked over and I saw that he was watching me. And I paused and I laughed at myself. And then I remeasured. And I grabbed another board and had him help me cut it correctly. So it's totally okay for your kids to see your mistakes, but how you handle those mistakes will set them up for how resilient that they're going to be.
Yeah, measure twice, cut once.
Right? I promise not all my responses have been so positive like this, but like everyone else, I'm always trying to work at improving myself.
Right.
But I'm telling you, there's nothing like having kids to really put a magnifying glass on some of your shortcomings.
Oh boy.
I've done so much personal development and personal awareness since I've had kids.
Yeah, they're brutally honest. That's
They
for
are.
sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. And when they are older, they're sure to let you know.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about they're honest when they're young. They're really honest when they're teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
When you make a mistake, you're going to know about it.
Yeah, everybody might.
Right? But you have to ask yourself, how do you handle those moments when you do? What are you really modeling for your children?
Yeah, implementing this mindset, I've really found that my children build better problem-solving skills, and not just in math. I mean, children need to know that they're in a safe place to make mistakes. Mistakes are part of the process. It's a place that really celebrates those mistakes. Really, they're learning opportunities, and with this mindset, your kids will see that they are all learning opportunities.
And when doing math, you can say things like, something doesn't seem right here, or, oh, I see where we're having trouble here. If your child does not understand something or is having trouble with a new concept, you can help them see that it's not a reflection on their intelligence, their potential, or their skill. Learning to see mistakes as opportunities is a good skill for everyone to have. You can help them understand that the struggle to acquire knowledge is an intrinsic part of the learning process.
Right. Finding the right level of challenge is also key to helping kids enjoy math, too. There's really no satisfaction in whizzing through easy, busy work problems. I mean, sometimes it's good for, a confidence builder, but it can be very frustrating to plug away at problems that are too hard.
Right. You know, one thing that I've always done is sometimes when one of my children have completely mastered something, I'll give them a worksheet from like 2 years ago that they're just like, oh my God, I'm so smart. And really, it's just, you have to do that. You cannot always challenge them.
No, and we don't always stick to the curriculum as scripted at all.
No.
You know, there's certainly a place for like rote fact memorization, but it's also fine to like move on from these concepts that once your kid has mastered them.
And another thing you need to think about is if you're using a program that even works for both you and your child, you may want to think about evaluating what you're using, and if it's not a good fit for them, change it. And there's a lot of programs out there.
Oh, so many.
Yeah, personally, I've always enjoyed teaching with manipulatives, like I said. And Nicole, I know you have always used a literature-based math curriculum. And actually, I supplemented with we read those books for fun because they're really fun books.
Well, and we started out with a manipulative-based program. Oh, yeah, we've used a lot of different math. I'm sure you have too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll do some episodes about actually unveiling some math curriculum. But
right.
We're going to stick today with, the math anxiety issue right now.
Sure.
Yeah. And anyway, so whatever works for you might not be working for your child's learning style. So you got to make sure that it's a good balance between the two of you.
It's okay to switch it up. So just a reminder that this is a weekly episode. We drop one every Thursday morning just for you. And if you have any additional ideas or comments, please come and comment on our Facebook page, on the episode thread, or send us an email at info@btdthomeschool.com. We'd really love to hear from you. So how do I deal with math anxiety?
Well, that's a great question. So math anxiety can be a very normal part of the process. Again, when we talk about modeling behavior for our kids, we do want to make sure we're careful that we're not projecting those math anxieties onto them if we do have math anxiety.
I have math anxiety.
So watch the things that you may say. You really don't want to say things like, I hate math, or I'm not good at algebra, or I have never liked geometry. Don't say those things. Do not do that. These statements can have an impact on our kids, even though we don't mean them to. They're always listening.
Yeah, always. And, some kids who've had bad experiences with math can experience math anxiety, and they can even panic when they're faced with the prospect of making mistakes or revealing that they do not yet understand something. There's a lot of perfectionist kids out there.
No, yeah.
That's very normal. It's not uncommon for some kids to have immediate panic when they see a drill sheet or a workbook filled with word
panic
problems.
when I see a drill sheet. Like,
right.
It does bring me anxiety.
Oh, me too. Lengthy tests, etc. If your child experiences math anxiety, I would encourage parents to consider these possible solutions.
Okay, the first one would be to take extra time to master more difficult concepts. And if your child melts down at the sight of a drill sheet, just begin with a few problems and then you can work up to more. And I would say, like, visually, it can be really overwhelming. So don't give them a sheet of 50 and say only do 10. Like, literally cover them up. Sometimes I've taken paper and taped paper on top of them so they can't even see them. And I would avoid timing drills altogether, especially if math is already an issue in your home. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't even know that was a thing. I've never timed my children on math.
Did a timing drill?
Yeah.
I don't think we did either.
I've heard
I
that.
remember them from school, which
Yeah.
is probably why I didn't do them with my kids.
Yeah, especially when you're learning a new concept. Nobody wants to be timed. Oh my gosh, that's stressing
Yeah.
me out just thinking about it.
Actually, I do have one kid that probably would have. She loved doing, remember those multiplication charts?
Oh,
where you
yeah.
just fill those in? Like, she made me keep, like, a million blank ones, and then someday she'd be like, here, I want a multiplication chart, and
Is
time
that
me.
Jane?
Yeah.
Oh, why isn't she studying math
I
in
know.
college?
She's so funny like that. You also want to limit the time you spend on a concept that your student has not mastered. For example, the attention span of an 8-year-old when trying to understand something is typically around 10 minutes. So a good rule of thumb is to use their age number plus 2 as a guide to determine what's an average for your student's age.
I know, that really surprises people when they hear that, because that would mean 8 minutes for a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you want the math session to be longer, you can either switch out to reviewing math the students already mastered, or maybe work with some games or activities using known skills. This can really help build confidence. And not just in math, you can use this technique with other subjects. Ask questions that you know that they already know. Kids love to be a know-it-all, so give them a shining moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Always do this.
Yeah, another option might be 2 short lessons with like a 2-hour break in between.
The next thing would be that when you're introducing a new concept, coach your student towards a more positive mindset by saying, you can say something like, okay, this is our first day on this, so let's see if we can catch a piece of it today. Again, limit time spent per lesson on the new concept, which would be their age plus 2 in minutes.
Yeah, collaborate with your child to set the pace for each day. If your math plan for the day involves a worksheet, maybe ask, how many problems do you think you'd be comfortable solving today?
Oh yeah, my kids always loved having a hand in that.
Yeah. Or like, let's start out finishing the odd numbered problems first. Sometimes I would tell my kids, here's a sheet with 20 on it, pick any 10. And of course, they would rush to pick the 10 easiest. But and that's not really like cheating themselves, because once you're taking like a big test, I would encourage you to do the same thing, like answer the easy ones first and then come into the end ones. So I was fine with them doing that. But this way, you can also evaluate any areas that might need additional assistance. Like, bring your kids into this whole process and help them regain a sense of their own learning.
I would encourage you to give your child permission to skip the questions that they don't know how to solve. And that may sound crazy, but you can say something like, oh, good, you skipped that one. We know we don't know that one. And this gives you an indication of what concepts to spend more time on with them when sparing them the anxiety of being penalized for knowledge that they have not yet mastered.
Right. And look over your work together. That helps your child feel ownership of his learning and a greater sense of responsibility. Plus, you can show your child that learning from mistakes is part of that learning process.
Right.
You also want to consider if the reason that you're struggling is because of a missed concept along the way. It's okay to work backwards to find that. Sometimes the success of later math is completely hinged on something that you learned earlier and that things built on. I've talked about this in another episode, that was the case for me. I struggled with math my whole life. Somewhere along the line with teaching my kids, I realized that there was something I missed in like fractions. And, all your future algebra hinges on fractions and decimals and percents.
Right. And you touched on that in the beginning of this episode, where you talked about, and if a child doesn't know a concept, it keeps building and building. And that sometimes, it may be 8th grade and all of a sudden they start panicking and they were doing fine with math. And you're like, wait, my kid loves math.
Right.
But they loved memorizing math. But they may not have really grasped some of those concepts. So then I would really suggest you go back. If you're just pulling your child out of school and you're like, oh my gosh, my child, that's okay. Take your time, go back a year, go back a couple years in concepts.
And yeah, find what it is that you missed.
Right. Set
or what you need
up
to
for
work
success. Right. Another thing you can do to help reduce stress is to build routine into your day. And we talk about this in our episode called Schedules, Routines, and Rhythms. If you haven't listened to that, go take a look. We also give you some sheets to help organize your day for free. You can download them from our website. And this applies to teaching and learning as well as the rest of your daily activities. When children can depend on a schedule and consistent people involved in that schedule, they're going to be able to settle their minds and take risks in other areas of their life. Create a routine, inform them about the routine, and then review it with some regularity. And I would encourage you to really explore having your child contribute to that routine. Ask them what works for them and incorporate that and really hear them on that.
It's extremely important to model a positive attitude towards math, too, if you don't like math yourself. I know it can be hard to fake a positive attitude, but, we moms set the tone for our homes. If mom's not happy, ain't no one happy. So, when we're dragging, everyone's dragging. And when we're energized and positive, then our kids are most likely to be too. It's contagious.
Yeah.
A little bit of positivity goes a long way. And when you pull it out, the math books can go a long way too.
Right.
Also, something that causes a ton of math anxiety in my own house is rushing through problems because you just want to get it done.
Oh gosh,
and
yes.
oh my goodness, I can't tell you how many times we've gotten hung up on a problem. It's turned to anger, and then we do something really dumb, like angry write a number from the first part of a multi-part problem, and then we write it down incorrectly because we're in a hurry to get done with it. And then, of course, then the rest of the answer is not going to be correct.
And then now the whole process took longer than if you had just done it right the first time.
Right. And it wasn't even that they did the math right, but they angry wrote the number wrong, which is so, it's so silly. And then, hopefully then we laugh at ourselves and not get more angry. But yeah, don't do this. Slow down and just get through the problem.
Oh, and another thing is to think about, you don't have to do math every single day.
Right.
Some people choose to do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or, pick a day that is just math focused and, whatever works for you. But yeah, don't rush through those problems.
Right. Yeah. One of my kids even was like, hey, can I do all 5 days of math in one day? Yeah, go for it. You want to get all that math done? That gives me 1 day for math year, so that's fine.
Bust out that teacher's guide that's gathering dust on that bookshelf. They're a wealth of useful information. I know I'm guilty of ignoring the teacher book halfway through a year, and I'm like, ooh, was I supposed to do that?
Do you ignore the directions when you're putting together IKEA furniture too?
No, I actually follow those to the T.
I do too. Just not the teacher books for math.
Right.
We don't need that. Let's chuck it.
Oh, until we do, and then we're panicked.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, use that. It's a wealth of knowledge. Most will help you understand the main objective of the lesson, and it's going to show you some ways to demonstrate a concept, and a lot even provide games and activities to reinforce what your child's learning, and it adds some fun into your math time. Learning concepts with games and making it a fun time rather than drill and kill can completely turn your home around. I mean, those math tears are going to stop immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Pull out that game and they say, oh, we're not doing math, we're playing a game. It's like, yes.
Yeah, games are a great concept for teaching math or for just reinforcing math concepts.
Right, and we've always been big gamers, and we've used games in our homeschool from the very beginning. Our friend Jen, she organized years ago a technology-free board game club, and we met at coffee shops once a week for years. That was so fun. I really do miss that.
I do too.
Yeah, it was a huge part of our life for many years, and a lot of homeschoolers use the term game schooling when incorporating games into their homeschool.
Oh yeah, games are a fantastic way to solidify a concept, especially in math. So we've actually taken all of our favorite games and organized them per concept for you into
It was a lot of work, so please look at this list.
Oh my gosh, it's awesome. So whether you need to take a break from worksheets, solidify a concept in place value, addition, multiplication, mental math, fractions, and logic, we've got all that in this document. We're going to link it in our show notes and put it on our website. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I organized it. I had those little bears we talked about before. Those
counting bears. I had counting dinosaurs. The bears are what most people know, right?
Well, and a lot of people with younger kids, they want to start school early, and this is a really fun way to start school.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, and I love the manipulatives they're fun.
Love them.
Yeah, we still have the one set that my kids really loved was linking cubes, and I still have them in my craft closet. They would not let me sell those when I got rid of
I had those. I'm not sure if I got rid of those or not.
Oh my gosh.
I have to go look. We would link them, and how many links are you tall, or how many links around are you? Yeah,
those
were
them.
Fun.
They are super
That's
fun.
All measuring. That's math.
Yeah. So there are some books too. I know I've mentioned Peggy K's Games for Math book. She also has games for writing and stuff. We've talked about it in another episode, but she's got all kinds of fun little games that you can do. We liked, these aren't so much games, but mental math kind of things. Sue Greenwald's 2 + 2 is not 5 and 5 × 5 is not 10. There's been times where we've taken a break in our math curriculum and just worked on that subtraction and addition, multiplication and division. And she's got a lot of little tricks for memorizing things. We'll still use those when Jillian's doing a problem and she's like, oh, I can't remember. I'm like, magic 9. And she's like, oh yeah, I remember. Singapore has mental math books that are great. I mean, these are things that like actually helped me.
Right.
Like as an adult, like to be faster at certain things in math.
Oh, another thing we use those math wraps where you take the string and you go from the 7 times 7 and you do the
I love those.
And prime climb. We love that's definitely on our list. Prime climb is really fun. It's logic. You incorporate prime numbers and multiplication, addition, and subtraction. So
that's a super fun board game.
Oh, and math dice. We've used math dice for everything. We've used regular dice and just made games with it with math. So.
Yeah, math dice are something that I used to always have in my purse for when you're at, like, if you're waiting in line somewhere, or if we were at a restaurant, we were waiting on food, we would haul out the math dice.
Yeah, that's an easy thing to transport anywhere.
Yeah.
The goal is to lessen stress, embrace mistakes, and provide this anxious child with many small victories. Mm-hmm. Through these kinds of processes, you and your child will begin to realize how to find learning success with limited anxiety. Not everything about learning will be fun, but some things you will have to power through. But knowing how to advocate for their own learning process is a skill that will assist them in becoming lifelong learners, and it's going to enable them to reach their full individual potential, which is what you want.
Yeah.
We will include some of the links and ideas and everything that we're talking about on our show notes on our website, so be sure to check that out after you listen. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Let's move on to test anxiety. So the question of the day is, should I give my homeschool child a math test?
Well, this is going to depend on a lot of different things. And opinions are also going to vary on this topic. Right. So, where are you in your homeschool journey? If you're brand new to homeschooling, like maybe you've pulled out of a school environment, you may want to consider testing just to get an idea of where your student is and if perhaps there are some learning gaps that you need to work on before advancing. Many homeschool math curriculums are going to have their own placement tests, and you can use those for this.
And testing in general can be a tricky concept because often if you aren't actually teaching to a testing isn't always going to be an accurate representation of what your student actually knows. I personally don't recommend taking a test until your child has demonstrated a mastery. I didn't even test at all when my children were in elementary school. They didn't test until, in the upper levels.
No, we didn't. Yeah, we didn't do any kind of test.
There was no reason to. I knew that they knew the concept.
Right.
That's another great benefit of homeschooling for sure. And then you can just move at your child's pace from there.
We love a mastery approach. The Wait for Mastery approach for testing teaches them to develop an understanding of what they need to be prepared for on an exam. This sets your child up for success in testing so that when they do see the word test at the top of the page, they'll feel confident in their ability to tackle it.
And when there are errors on the test, try to keep them in the same perspective you would with daily work. When working through mistakes, you can ask, were multiple problems missed that use the same concept? And if so, this might be an indication that they need to revisit a concept for some additional practice. Did they rush through it? Were there distractions? It might indicate that they were tired or not feeling well that day, which might have made it hard to focus. I know you said that about Jillian before, or I don't know, one of your children, whenever you're like, what's going on? And then you realize that later that day they're sick.
Right. And then you're like, oh, that's why. By asking these questions and having a conversation about errors, you can again reinforce that mistakes are an opportunity for growth. And together you're going to learn and make decisions regarding the next steps for continued success in both daily work and in test prep.
Right. And another thing you need to do is to celebrate their accomplishments. When your child accomplishes something especially hard, like mastering a new math concept, do something fun to celebrate. The more that you and your child embrace the perspective that mistakes are opportunities to grow, the more positive the learning process will become for both of you. I'm confident that your student is going to grow to feel like math is something that they can do, and possibly they may actually enjoy it.
They might, and then we will too. No more math tears.
Please no.
So tune in next week for episode 26. Where do homeschoolers go for field trips? Are field trips expensive for homeschoolers? How do you find unique field trips? And how do you organize a field trip? It's going to be a really fun episode. I can't wait.
I love all our field trips.
Let's go on one right now.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers. Be sure to check us out on our website at btdthomeschool.com, as in been there, done that, btdthomeschool.com. You can join our mailing list and get news and updates on future podcasts, and be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at the BTDT Been There, Done That Homeschool Podcast.